Hello! In this video I'm going to show you how I made my 1880s chemise and drawers. I found this chemise that I quite liked in an 1883 issue of the Bazar. But since this magazine only features patterns from 1886 and onward, this is the chemise pattern I will be using instead. I scaled up the pattern and fitted it to my measurements. This is what my drawers are supposed to look like, and this is what I have. It doesn't look the same at all. I started by adding more length to it, then I removed a good amount from the sides. It was still too big and I ended up removing some more. Then I made a mock-up, and it fits. It's a bit too long for my liking, so I will be removing the extra length I added. Now, I didn't realize this then, but my drawers sit too high on my waist, so I ended up removing a good 10 centimeters from the top as well. Then it was time to cut out my pattern pieces. And this is what my pattern looks like. I added an extra 2 inches at the center front and back of my drawers, and this will become my facing. I sewed down the inner leg seam on my machine, and then I fell down the seam allowance to each side to reduce bulk. This was felled by hand, being careful to only catch a single thread from the outer fabric. This looks nice, but it left my machine stitching quite vulnerable, and I think it would have been better had I felled the allowance to one side, but on the right side of the fabric. The facing and hem were finished in the same way. I sewed down my center front and back seam on my chemise, and then the shoulder seam. I then used some scrap linen as facing, covering the inside of the shoulder seam. The neckline was felled down, and then I continued finishing all the seams on the chemise. This took some time. this is what the finished seams look like, and I'm quite happy with how they turned out. I gathered up the pant legs and attached it to my waistband. I wanted it to dip down in the front, so I clipped the corners, turned under the seam allowance and stitched it down with a mostly invisible stitch. And let's pretend that this was the only time I had to do this. Once finished, I realized it sat too high and I had to do it all over again. For decoration, I stitched together 2 pieces of lace, gathering the scalloped one as I went and then secured it to the pant legs. I measured out and made my buttonhole and then attached the button. For the chemise, I sewed lace around the neckline. And pieced together lace that I attached to the front to create a similar neckline to the 1883 chemise. The excess lace was cut away and the raw edges were secured. There are a few mistakes I would like to have done differently, but I'm happy with how they turned out in the end. And this is what the finished garments look like.